Hi everyone, my name is Jonas Hagströmer Theodorsson, and I'm super happy to give you this talk today on profit marketing and building global scale. So let me share my screen with you. So brief, my background. I have a consultancy background. I studied applied mathematics and what you call AI and machine learning for 15 years ago in Stockholm. And then I worked in sort of the applied mathematics area since then. And my talk today is actually based on a really interesting study that we have done on more than 1 billion ads impressions, and we've learned a lot, and I'm happy to share that with you today. So let's jump into my talk on profit marketing. So these are the big three challenges that we see in terms of if you're going to run a profitable and scalable online sales business today. You typically have three areas that is a challenge for you when it comes to e-commerce or selling anything online, right? First, you have what we would say is the marketing cost. And the marketing cost, like if you're running like independent on what type of channel you're using, but for example, like in the early days using Facebook and Instagram paid social, for example, the cost per click were quite low. And you can see this today if you look at markets that are sort of low maturity phase, that the CPCs are quite low compared to if you look at cost per click for Google Ads, for example, in India, compares to Google Ads cost per click in any country in Europe. It's like a 10x difference in what you need to pay. So every time a channel starts to work and it's often very crowded, that's of course increase the cost for the marketing channel. So that is one challenge that we see, and we think it will be even more challenging in the future. The second thing is that the more marketplaces we see as well, the more challenge will be about pricing, price comparison site, affiliate solutions, and a clear area on that will always push you in terms of margin. So that's the second part. And then of course it's about finding competence. So for example, if you look at how long do you actually work within digital marketing if you work as an e-commerce company, we see that many of the key roles typically change within 1 or 2 years. And of course, if that is a key person, it's going to be really tough to change that person every 1 or every second year. So those are the three things that we see is a big challenge for everyone who is running an e-commerce company and market. So this is also a really interesting study that was released quite recently. And I guess if you're a marketeer today, you probably talk a lot about funnels. But this study is actually really interesting because it sort of says that the funnel is actually dead. And this study is based on more than 300 different customers' journeys over 31 categories, and is done in collaboration with Google and looks at behavior science and what is actually the commonplace from trigger to purchase something until you actually trigger it. And the interesting thing is you can Google this study yourself later, right? But one of the conclusions is that there is no clear funnel that happening between like awareness, consideration, and going into this. So look at it and think about it, because it will probably bring you some new perspectives on how you look at your marketing, because there's a lot of people talking about funnels, and the reality is not that simple, I would say. So that brings us more into what I will talk about today, about really how to run profitable marketing and scale globally. So I don't have time to talk about brand versus performance marketing today. So of course that is important, how you build your brand, how you get people to come back, how do you get people to really engage, and that is something that is very important. But if you look at the performance part, which I'm going to focus more on, is that to actually change from talking about performance to profit marketing. and then talking about profit marketing and how you bring that into scale when you're launching new markets. So how do you actually select new markets? How do you score new countries that you would engage, for example? So you actually, because like every company, even the largest companies in the world, the resources are limited. So you need to spend your time and money wisely. So this is what I will focus on today, based on the intro about the challenge that we see in today's market. So first, before we start talking about what you should set as a target, for example, for a performance channel, first, I think it's important to realize like what segment are you in really, and I think there are actually quite distinct 4 different segments within the e-commerce space that you can be in. So the first one is if you're a direct-to-consumer brand and you're selling your own products that you develop and design, then of course, if you're like like Gymshark, for example, which is a great company within the direct-to-consumer space, typically the average order value is below 500 euros. So this brings in that you typically need to be profitable on every single order. Of course, you can always look at the big picture and see if you get returning users, and you can look at the lifetime value, but typically you need to be profitable on each order. Then if you continue on, you're still selling direct to consumers, but you are more a subscription business. And I think one of the most famous subscriptions business in the world is Netflix, right? You sign up and you keep watching it. But you can even argue that many of the really big marketplaces today, for example, Amazon's Prime version is actually even more like a subscription business. But you just continue buy continuously for that platform. So I think there's a lot to learn from typical SaaS business or subscriptions business. Of course, keeping real close contact and see like how can we improve retention or reduce churn, how do we acquire, what's the cost per acquisition, and keeping an eye on those metrics. And then when we go down to the clear more the retailers, for example, still looking at different average order value. So for example, Walmart, if you're selling with below 500 euros, it's still probably quite important that you are profitable on every order. And many of the companies here that are retailers, you typically mix in your own products to get the margins up as well. But then if you go into the higher range of what the average order value is, like for example, if you're selling furnitures, you maybe are not that sensitive about delivery, for example. Of course, if you're going to buy a sofa, probably from IKEA, you expect to have that pretty fast, right? But still, if you're selling more high-ticket items, maybe that is not as sensitive. So just starting here and then identify who you are and what is key for your business is always a really important start to map out first. Because there are a lot of sayings like, hey, you should go with lifetime value, you should go with this. And there's actually quite few companies that should strive with their whole budget based on lifetime value, for example. So taking it from that, when you know what segment you're in and what should be important, then comes what the priority are. So is that to grow your top line or optimize your bottom line? And of course, to be able to say that, you need to have a really good understanding of your business economics. And of course, that breakdown starts with what's the top line revenue going through the cost of goods sold. Okay, what is our shipping look like, and how does that look different for different markets that we're launching into? So having this on a really detailed level and make sure that the whole organization has a great understanding of what does success looks like for us. Because this is something that I have seen create a lot of tension within companies, that if you're not aligned on this, then it very easily creates frustration within the organization. So for example, if a CFO take a budget cut decision and then communicate that fast, maybe that is based on information that not everybody has, and then it could feel very frustrating. And of course, if you're a performance marketer at that company working really hard to solve things, and then you get your budget cut by X%, of course that's a big challenge. And if you don't understand really why, then that's a bigger challenge. So when it comes to the communication and the measurement part within companies, I would say these are the three typical different organizational levels that I see that really needs to be aligned. So on the left side, we have the business economics, like top level, really how much are we spending on marketing as a percentage? What's the revenue, what's EBIT, and what's growth, right? What really the truth, actually. How many orders did we get? What is the real numbers? This is typically reports that the CEO, CFO, and CMO works with. And then it comes into more of the details. We can come into actually channel economics. So we can look at, okay, what is actually Facebook ads bringing to our business? How is that working compared to print or TV or Google Ads or TikTok or any other new experimental channel, or organic, for example? And typically that is both measured in the tool itself, but also typically most companies use Google Analytics, or you have a CRM system, for example. This is more where the CMO and the e-commerce manager spend most of their days, right? But then going all the way down to the unit economics and looking at, okay, on each order, are we profitable or not? Should we be profitable or not? What's the return on ad spend we need to have from this channel and from this order to be healthy and running the company in a good way? And like I mentioned before, I think here, this is where we see a lot when it comes to the disconnect between the different areas. So, for example, if you have a CFO that doesn't really understand return on ad spend and how to run Google Shopping in the latest and most complex and advanced way, then they can easily come up with the different things that will actually cut budget for various reasons. But if the most successful companies, they typically work with a dynamic budget based on clear targets and based on profit levels all the way down to each individual product in the channel, then everybody in the organization can trust the system and keep running, because that is the best thing. So managing expectations and make sure that everybody understands what we're measuring, how success looks like on each level, and also have access to the data, so it's easy to run. So how do you actually do that? So, for example, just starting with looking at overall metrics. So starting with the business system level, like looking at, okay, how much marketing spend do we have? And what's the gross revenue? Like, what's the correlation between them? Can we fit a straight line through these points? What the timeline will look into? Like, what is this? Is this something that we see this is actually working when we are scaling up? Or should we look at how we can increase the angle of this curve, for example? But doing this kind of analysis is something that I think is very important, and it serves as a really good point to have a good discussion with the different stakeholders within the company. Then going into what we see in the business system correlates with our channels that we evaluate, for example, in Google Analytics. So what is the error between real transactions that we have and what we see in Google Analytics? Is it like plus minus a couple of % in difference here? Can we really trust the numbers? Do we see that this is a high correlation, for example? What's the different areas that we need to see here? And this is something that is very important to just align on and make sure that this follows through everything, because this is based on a lot of things. And of course, here comes more detailed discussion about what attribution model should be used, or what attribution should be used in each channel to allocate the budget, for example. How much budget should we allocate for for each channels. But having the basis here is, of course, what you need to establish first. And then when you have the correlation from the business system to Google Analytics or whatever analytics system you're using, then of course looking at what's the correlation between analytics and the channel. So for example, looking at conversions from Facebook. What is actually Facebook counting as a conversion and transaction and correlating to what Google Analytics has? And of course, this will never add up perfectly or very seldom. But as long as you know the difference here, then it is a very good input as how you can allocate the budget. And of course, in an environment where we are today, where privacy is getting more and more important, this is something that of course will be harder and harder, and make sure that it's aligned in the future. So when you have done this, taking that into looking at all the channels and start asking yourself, like, okay, what's actually the overlap here? Like, how many conversions are actually double counted here? So if you just looking at this example of a media mix, like, okay, we have paid search, we have organic search, we have price comparison, and then we have social. Like, starting to look at this, and this can be done from the simplest way, just looking at the different channels by itself, and then building it up to more complex way of doing it, like building a full MMM model, for example. But of course, depending on the size of the company where you are and what you need, this can be done in different ways. And I think simplification is very important in many cases. So just take the three most important channels, for example, for you. Look at them separately and look at, okay, what is actually accounted for in each one, and start to make the baseline and make some assumptions here. And then when that is done, together with what I show you in terms of going from business system to Google Analytics and to different channels, then sit down everyone together from CEO, the board level, all the way through e-commerce manager, CMO, and all the way down to, your agency or performance marketing team, to really discuss this, to see and make sure that everybody understands, okay, why do we have this disconnect between the different measurement system? What is the decision we should take based on it, to make sure that you have an organization that is, feels safe and trusted and can actually run the KPIs that is most efficient. So this is something that I suggest that everyone should do on a continuous basis, because people change job, and it's important to align things. And also technology change fast, right? So just making sure that these numbers still holds true and aligning on them. So based on this, then hopefully you will have set the decision for what you should actually run in terms of, let's say, Google Ads. So how do you actually take your margin data and turn that into targets you can use in Google Ads? So everybody who tunes in today on this talk will in the end get access to bonus content. You will get the Google spreadsheet, and there you will actually have simple input. Just put in your gross margin, your average order value, your cost of sold goods, and then you will step by step come through all the way down to what is your ROAS, return on ad spend target, that you can use to look into the Google Ads channel and how you should optimize it. Because I meet a lot of people that also says, we have a fantastic ROAS in Google Ads, for example. And this is one of the reasons why your ROAS can be too high, and it's maybe not the most efficient for your business. And you can probably make more money if this is the case. So let's look at A and B version here. So A version, you have an impression share of 60%, meaning that theoretically you can show your ads to 100% of the users. But in this case, based on the budget, you can only show it to 60%. You have a revenue of 100,000, you get a return on ad spend of 10. That means you have an ad spend on 10,000. From the channel, then you have a result for 90,000. But if you can increase the impression share and show your ads more to more people, your revenue will go up, let's say in this case that revenue goes up to 150,000. Your ROAS will go down to 7 because you need to spend more to get these extra customers' eyeballs here. And the cost will go up to 21,429. That means that the result from the channel is 128,000. This means that as long as you have your unit economics correct here and you are still profitable with a ROAS of 7, you actually have an increase here of 43% between ROAS 10 and ROAS 7, which is great. And it's, of course, a way for you to accelerate growth with profit as well. So this is a good exercise to also do. And when you download the e-commerce economics afterwards, after the talk, do this for your business, check where your levels are, and review your targets that you're using. And if you're using an agency for it, then do this exercise together with them. So looking at Google Shopping, which is, of course, if you are within e-commerce, Google Shopping is a very important part. Of course, Facebook ads, catalog ads are, of course, another like similar marketplace or close to a marketplace where you have product, you have a clear price, you have a quick way, and it's really you have it really an important part for bringing your revenue in from that channel. But what is actually more important here than actually running the Google ads itself is actually to really make sure that the assortment analysis is great before you look into this. So knowing your assortment can sometimes be even more important than actually running the really the 100% optimal setup for it. So for example, looking at products like if you have a shelf in front of you, for example, here with shampoos, for example, and you're going to sell them, looking at the products where actually here our margin is just too low, right? This is actually impossible to sell with the margin. So what can you do with these? Like, can these products be just added in, or should it be an upsell, or should they actually not even be in the assortment at all? You can also look at the threshold with a low price. So if you have products with very low price, maybe the threshold for your business could be 10 euros, for example. Maybe these products should not either be run the ads on, for example, because maybe they should be bundled as a package to get the average order value up, for example. So starting with just those two questions, screen through the assortment and make sure that you clear out the ones that actually shouldn't be there is a very important thing. Then comes to the more detailed things, and this plot here is every product here has a revenue, and that's the size of the bubble. And you see on the y-axis here you have comparable price or benchmark product price, which is weighted on how many people actually click through based on the price, and then you have return on investment. So the point here is that even before you start about clustering your products and run Google Shopping ads, for example, it's very important that you segment them out and learn where they are. So for example, in the B segment here you have low price compared to your market. Still, it seems like you have a low return on ad spend. So there's something that is not working here. And of course, this can be many different reasons for this. This could be products that actually don't sell on the market. This could be, there is something here. But if you have a good price, they're not selling, there is something fishy, and you should definitely invest the B segment a lot more. If you look at the C segment, you still have a low price compared to your competition. Then the question is, okay, do I actually have the margin here to keep running these products? Should I increase the prices, for example? Because if they're not price sensitive, maybe you can actually increase the prices and keep running more profitable levels. Or the A segment, well, it seems like we actually have a good return on ad spend. We're still actually high priced compared to our competitors. So this is also something where you probably can learn a lot from. So just looking at these different segments, do this kind of analysis and really make sure that you look into this before you send your product out This goes to any marketplace. Like if you're running ads on Amazon, or if you're running on Facebook or Google, like anything, like knowing your assortment and doing this analysis continuously is really important before you just feed them into the channel. And when you have done this, I'm not going to go through any like a detailed setup for Google Shopping, but in terms of what we have seen work the best based on this large study that we have done, and of course studying more than 1 billion ads impressions over last year, which was really extreme for e-commerce in general. Of course, there was a lot of interesting insights, but trying to also, estimate and experiment all the time is very important. And for example, we build our own simulations for looking at the effect of different cost per click levels for Google Shopping. But of course, you can also just do this sort of take top percent of your assortment, make sure that you have them split out on individual product level, do smart experiment on price, experiment how much budget you allocate to them, so you can test. Because like you don't need to have the biggest development team to run this. Of course, if you have a big company and then you need to be efficient and do this at scale, then of course you need that. But for a smaller company, I think you can do a lot with just basic assumptions and do smart things and using many of the automations that are there, and keep testing and like this, simulate and try to always improve the performance. So those are the things, and you will get it in the end of my talk. You get access to the Google spreadsheet that you can calculate this yourself. Then you can use that to set up your targets, and then you can break them down as granular as you have time to and as possible can do in Google Shopping. And I would recommend you to start experiment there. Based on when you have set that, then let's talk about how you go global. And let's say that you have one market today, or let's say that you have 10 to 50 markets today. And even the biggest companies today, they have a challenge with resources, because you cannot go on all markets all the time, right? So how do you pick your next market? And this is also something I see a lot of people do very differently. And many times it is one person in the room, or maybe two persons, that say we should go with this country, this is the best, or our competitor is doing this, then let's go after them as well. And I think that is that could be a good way, but I think there's probably some more data you can gather before you take a decision to do this, because going into a country, it is a big decision for almost every e-commerce company, and it's not something you just do and launch, because it's a long-term thing as well. So picking your next country and how to do this in a data-driven way. So what market should we launch next? It's a simple question, but often it's based on a gut feeling. So what are the typical parameters they can look at? For example, looking at barrier to entry. So different tolls, shipping from a hub, payment, in-house translation. Of course, there's a lot of parameters here, but you can score each one of them in terms of your business. And that is something I think will gather a really interesting insight. You can also look at what competitors are doing, and you can also look at other major trends, and of course also market and consumer behavior. So what is the population in this country, for example? What is the local search behavior? So how many people are searching, for example, for this category keyword, for example? Or what is the cost per click on Google Ads? And what do you think the audience purchase power has in this market? So you see, there's a lot of different questions, and I think this one turns out to be a really interesting challenge to solve with data. But what if you can actually score each of one of these segments and put them into a function that actually summarize into a score for your business? So for example, if you could say that our web shop, the score for Sweden is 72, but for Finland it's 23, and you can use that as a guideline to actually decide on what market you should launch. And depending on the resources you have, maybe you're actually talking about, okay, we actually launch 3 countries every month, for example. If you would be like accelerating and getting new funding in, for example, which is a really high pace for launching new markets. Or you say, for us, it's super important, we launch 1 country every quarter or every second quarter. Then, of course, in both of the cases, it's actually equally important to make sure that you select your country, you really nail the execution of the launch of that country, and then you, of course, improve on that and keep doing that and just repeating the way of launching it. So how do we actually do this then? So what we do is that in these different areas, we look at population. Could be like I mentioned, population, average income per household. We look at different metrics in terms of population-wise. We score each for each country, almost all over the world, and then we put in a parameter or a weight for this function. So in this case, you see alpha. So for example, population country divided by the max. So we get like a parameter. And then we have a discussion with the local company about how important is population for you. Then we look at search parameters. And search, you can learn a lot from a search engine. And that, like I said, search volume on category keywords, cost per click estimates for the local market. Weighting these, and of course also talk about, okay, how important is search engine when it comes to your go-to-market? For example, we are not using it, we're using it a lot, or it's the absolute most important channel, for example. Of course, the beta function here, beta will be weighted differently for different types of companies. And then you also look at the barriers to entry, because you could have like complete blockers, like this, we're selling sport nutrition, for example, for various countries, and it seems like there are some tricky regulations here, and these are actually blockers. So then we just need to make sure that this is accounted for as well. The toll can be really high on some countries, and of course, if you look at Europe now with Brexit, of course, that's also something you really need to make sure that you are aligned on and know if it's the right way or not the right way for you. And then the third, like the social part. So if you have a go-to-market that is heavily driven by influencer marketing, then of course, time spent on social media in this country, social media penetration, those are really important parameters because they will judge the level of success you can have with your influencer marketing campaign. So building a complete function custom-made for your business is something that always generate a really good discussion and take away the gut feeling and makes a really good discussion. So what we do based on this, then we do what we call the growth workshop on globalization. Then we bring in, once again, all the people in the room from the board and the C-level all the way through e-commerce manager and performance part. And then we look at the data together. We look at the assumption that people scored, like, okay, if you would need to decide to go in a market today, what market should that be? So you can actually look at the different areas there. And based on that, then you can decide on how to work on this. So you actually build a long score for each country and then continue working your way all the way through this when you're launching new countries. And of course, things will change and your go-to-market will change and you will learn things as you go. So this needs to be updated. But having a playbook based on data for how you select the countries you're launching into and not just do a quick look in Google Trends to see, okay, this category keyword is trending right now. Let's go for this country. It's not enough, right? And there's a lot of more signals that you need to take into account before you can assess this. So based on that, keep building your own framework and playbook for launching a new country or region. This is just a template discussion for launching new countries. So phase 1, 2, and 3. So the phase 1 is the launch phase, phase 2 is the growth phase, and the phase 3 is really decision. Should we try to scale this market and really be the market leader in this? Of course, that is different, and it's going to be difficult to do this in different areas, right? Or should we just, okay, we are at level now, we should just switch this over to profit and then launch 3 new markets, for example, to keep the growth going like that. And assigning this, building your own framework, and of course building out this template of steps to make sure that you have a repeatable and scalable way to grow profitable is something that I think is very important. And the companies that we work with that do this really, really well, they have a really efficient way to just keep improving and running this all the time. So I will, you can get this, and you can also see some more insights about the different parts. But for example, depending on the size and what you're selling, right? So for example, look at point 3. So establishing a baseline with more than 10 orders per day per marketing channel. So why is 10 a number, for example? Just an first level to really see, okay, do we have enough data to actually start taking decisions on later? Because if you only have like 1 order every second day from a channel, it's going to be really hard to actually say, is this working or not, right? It could be that you're just not investing enough in that market from the beginning. So making sure that you do enough to actually get the results right. If you go on further, you can look at like, for example, let's take point 9, for example, when it's time to really, should I hit the gas and scale this market to become a marketing leader, or just optimize profit? Maybe the work you needed to do here to go to point 9, many people ask like, okay, how long time will this take? Yeah, of course, it's depending on how you what you put into it, and what the team is doing, and how much you can actually deliver here. But for example, if you see that, okay, we reach point 9, we're really struggling, we're probably not going to be the market leader, maybe then it's actually worth just, okay, can we turn this into a profitable market, make sure that we have a healthy performing business in this market, and then launch new markets based on that. But the key is to actually base the selection of market based on data, and not based on that you have worked on the market for 6 months and then you haven't solved it. So those are key things that I see is very important when keep launching new markets and be continuous with them. So the bonus content, here you can just scan this QR code, then you will get straight into the bonus content. Just sign up for it, and then we get the Google Sheet with the e-commerce economics. You will get the data studio template, so you can monitor your ads channel, and you will also get a guided video how to guide that you can follow as well, and learn more about how to work with these targets and how to improve them. And I hope you got a lot of new input and ideas, and also some useful tools that you can actually bring into your business today. So with that, I would like to turn over if we have some Q&A for the last minutes of my talk. While I'm waiting on that, one of the questions I typically get a lot when I do speeches at Google or around Europe, I get a lot of questions about like the selection process about different countries, and how to score them, and how to look at it from your business, and I think it's not doing it detailed, but not too detailed. And what do I mean with that? I mean that looking at category keywords. So typically you start with your website. You probably have 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 categories. I mean, looking at those first, take those keywords to look at the search volume per month, average search volume, and then look at what is the average cost per click to rate top Google, that is a really good way to get the first assumption and to see what is the potential in that market actually. Many times that is often more important than looking at the population, for example, because if there is demand and people search for it, then there is a higher likelihood then that is working. In terms of looking at different countries, like I mentioned, India is of course a really big market. The potential is really big. The cost per click is extremely low in India compared to many different markets. That doesn't mean it is easy. I meet maybe 1 or 2 e-commerce entrepreneurs per day coming from India, and I think it's a really interesting part. But of course, when average order value is often quite low as well, payment solution is a challenge. Cash on delivery is an important part there. So of course there are different challenges there. If you look at comparing to UK, where the cost per click is really high on specifically some of the more bigger e-commerce segments, then of course that's 2 completely different markets with different challenges that it's not, you know, it's not the easy to say which one is best, but it needs to be assessed based on your business, for example. So I think you should be able to, if you have any questions, but otherwise that is that is the key from my talk. And like I said, hope you got some good input and thoughts from it.